Welcome to another unsettling episode of Evil Exposed Killers. I'm Charles, your guide into the dark recesses of human depravity. Added to his feelings of inadequacy. As Berdella grew older, his interests took a dark turn. He developed a fascination with art, particularly works that depicted violent and macabre scenes. This interest would later become a significant part of his adult life, blending seamlessly into his criminal activities. In 1967, Berdella moved to Kansas City to attend the Kansas City Art Institute. Near of a respectable businessman, Berdella harbored sinister impulses. In the early 1980s, these impulses began to manifest in the most horrifying ways. He started luring young men to his home, often using promises of work, drugs, or shelter. Once inside, they would find themselves trapped in a scattering the remains throughout the city. Emboldened by his ability to get away with murder, Berdella continued his spree. In April 1985, he lured Robert Sheldon, a transient man, to his home with the promise of shelter. Sheldon quickly found himself in a similar predicament. Berdella used a variety of methods to torture Sheldon, including applying drain cleaner to his eyes, which caused excruciating pain and blindness. He also inserted needles into sensitive areas of Sheldon's body and used electric shocks to inflict further torment. This horrific ordeal lasted for days before Berdella decided to end Sheldon's suffering. He suffocated him and, as before, dismembered the body, disposing of the parts in various locations. The third known victim was Mark Wallace, another transient, who was lured to Berdella's home in June 1985. Wallace's torture was equally brutal. Berdella used electric shocks, needles, and other implements to inflict severe pain. The torture was methodical, with Berdella taking notes on the reactions of his victims, as if experimenting to find the most effective means of causing pain. Wallace, like the others, eventually succumbed to his injuries, and his body was dismembered and his murders, and the utter disregard for human life all paint a picture of a man driven by dark and incomprehensible urges. By mid-1985, Robert Berdella had honed his gruesome methods, becoming more confident and meticulous with each new victim. The sense of control and power he derived from torturing and killing his captives fueled his depravity, leading him to commit even more. Documenting every scream and cry for mercy as if conducting a macabre experiment. Ferris eventually succumbed to his injuries and was dismembered like the others before him. Berdella's next victim was Todd Stoops, a 23-year-old male prostitute and drug addict whom Berdella had known for some time. In June 1986, Berdella lured Stoops to his home under the pretense of rekindling their acquaintance. Eventually, Stoops died from a combination of dehydration, blood loss, and the physical trauma inflicted upon him. As with his previous victims, Berdella dismembered Stoops's body and disposed of the remains. In 1987, Larry Pearson, a 20-year-old acquaintance, turning point in Berdella's reign of terror came in March 1988 when he abducted his final victim, Chris Bryson. Bryson, a 22-year-old male prostitute, was lured to Berdella's home with the promise of money and drugs. Once inside, Bryson was subjected to the same torturous routine as Berdella's previous. Unimaginable horror. The evidence of torture and murder was everywhere. Photographs, journals, and a variety of instruments used to inflict pain. Berdella's meticulous records provided a clear and damning account of his crimes. The police capacity to understand the full extent of his actions. However, the sheer volume of evidence documenting his careful planning and methodical execution of his crimes undermined this argument. On August 5, 1988, Robert Berdella was convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a measure of justice to the families of his victims, but the scars left by his actions would endure. While in prison, Berdella maintained a facade of cooperation, participating in interviews and psychiatric evaluations. He provided chilling insights into his motives and the psychology behind his actions. Berdella claimed that his murders were a way to exert control and power, compensating for the feelings of inadequacy and helplessness that had plagued him throughout his life. In 1992, Berdella died of a heart attack in prison, bringing an end to his life, but not to the impact of his crimes. The legacy of his brutality left a lasting mark on the community and on the field of criminal psychology. His case became a subject of study for those seeking to understand the minds of serial killers and the factors that drive them to commit such heinous acts.